Welcome to the North Group podcast. At North Group, we are often invited into organizations to influence leadership and organizational behaviors. It is through these sustained relationships that we gain a deeper understanding of each client and the many ways they benefit their employees, their customers, and the broader community. It is impressive. Through this podcast series, we will be sharing the stories of a few of these clients and how they make our communities better. Well, today I'm joined by my friend, colleague, North Group founder, Roger North, and we're going to talk...
Is that all the titles you're going to give me?
That's it for today, just for right now.
I like friend best, so that's
right.
cool.
And we could talk about golf handicaps and things like that, but we won't. Okay, all right. But it's exciting because today we're here to talk about a client of ours that's been around since 1911.
1911.
That's a long time ago.
That's a long time.
That's
111
Warfel.
Years.
Yes, correct.
Is that right?
That's right. I think so.
Yeah.
And so that's Warfel Construction.
Yeah.
Super excited to talk about them, located here in Lancaster County, but certainly serving a broader community. So, Roger, when you think about Warfel, tell us a little bit, what is it that they do?
Yeah. Well, they're a general contractor and construction manager,
Sure.
as are a lot of their competitors.
Correct.
But honestly, Gina, I've been privileged to serve Warfel for 12 years now, and the differences that are talked about on their website, the differences that you and I may talk about, you and I are both fortunate to have many friends there and be on the inside of a number of conversations that take place there and witness the work they do. This integrity value, this idea that what we say and what we do are consistent. There are very few organizations that we could name that are more true to that than Warfel, and for that reason, just an honor to be affiliated with them. So yes, general contractor, construction manager throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. 3 offices, headquartered in Lancaster, with offices in Paoli, Greater Philadelphia office, and a new office that opened in the Shenandoah Valley in Winchester, Virginia, just a few months ago. So growth is evident, and it's growth for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And interesting, because when we talk about construction, we often don't think about integrity and construction going hand in hand. How has Warfel been able to match those two up? Be a construction company that, certain industries, they get a bad rap sometimes. How has Warfel been able to overcome that?
Yeah, well, I think the broad answer is an answer you would expect North Group to give, and that's leadership. This flows down really historically. I mean, if you go back to 1911, and obviously I wasn't affiliated with the company back then, goes without saying, but if you would go through all the different leaders that they've had, and more recently from George Riccozzi to Ralph Simpson to Matt Hartzler, these are people of integrity. And when I say integrity, just matching up what we say we're going to do with the way that we actually behave, and then following through on our commitments. And it seems so simple, and it should be simple, but we don't experience that on a regular basis in our economy and our society right now. So even just that, and they're way more than that, but even just that makes a difference. So I think it's leadership. I think, Gina, you like to use a phrase that leaders in companies should be CROs. You remind me of this a lot. Excuse the pun. Chief Reminding Officers.
That's right.
And the 3 partners here at Warfel, speaking of Matt Hartzler, Conlon Swope, Brett Calabretta, are consistently using these phrases that are so important there, because they're embedded in the behavior of Warfel. And I think that's really fundamental to the leadership of this company, the clarity about who they are for. And number 1, they're for their clients, and number 2, they're absolutely for their employees, and by extension, obviously, for their community.
Absolutely. So you mentioned phrases and Warfel, and I live not that far away from where Warfel is headquartered, and I see Warfel trucks, I see Warfel signs, I see, when I meet Warfel employees, the hats. I actually think even my husband has a Warfel t-shirt.
Yeah.
Somehow I don't have any Warfel gear. And
I think we could get you some swag.
Their gear is kind of cool, but I don't have any. But everything Warfel related says clients for life. I mean, it's all over. You can't miss it. You couldn't miss it if you
That's
wanted
right.
to. So what's that all about?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of companies, and I have no problem with this, by the way, have a motto or a saying
Sure.
that is helping brand awareness and would be on trucks and billboards and buildings and things like that. And then they have a mission, which is somehow phrases what they're about or what they do, and that would be on their website, hopefully embedded in their employees' behavior. In this case, it's just those 3 words. Is it 3? Clients for life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was fortunate to be in the room when we formulated that, and when that became, a language that really got embedded. But more importantly than that, it's a set of behaviors that are very well understood at Warfel, what it means to have clients for life. It's a mission. So is it a motto? Yes, but more importantly, it's a mission.
And you don't often see people, organizations able to do that well, combine the two. So give me some specifics of Clients for Life and what it means and how it plays out and how does that connect with employees?
Warfel is primarily interested in relationships over structures.
Okay.
Now, almost every organization now says they are interested in relationships, but as the old saying goes, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak,
Sure.
or in the process of negotiating a contract, an agreement, the pre-construction process, the construction process, the relationship that happens after the grand opening. Matt Hartzler tells a story. Matt's the CEO. He tells a story about a client that approached him partway through the building process and said, "Hey, I kind of like this phrase you have, Clients for Life, but I really don't know what it means."
Okay.
And I don't know if Matt just kind of deferred on the answer. Matt tends to be a man of few words. But then he tells this story that at the grand opening or ribbon cutting, whatever it was,
Sure.
celebration of the building that they built for this client, that the client, I assume it was the owner or the CEO, whomever it was, came over and said to Matt, that question I asked you about Clients for Life, now I understand. And so I don't know how quickly I don't know who that client was or how soon they'll be building another building, but I'm reasonably sure that when they do, they'll be making one phone call rather than the painful process of going through an RFP and 5 different
Sure.
phone calls and having architects recommend people
And
because
interviews and the
they
whole-
got
yeah.
it.
Right.
And they recognize the value that comes through the relationships that get built. And I think another thing that would be very easy to do in the construction business, general construction in particular, would be to say, okay, that building is done, we're going to move on. That doesn't happen at Warfel. You can be sure that the people that you met through that process, from Matt to Con and Brett, other people, the project manager, certainly the site superintendent who is there every day, are going to keep that relationship going. And whether it's 6 months later or 6 years later that you're ready to build again, they're going to be familiar with what's happening in your organization. They're going to be ready to swing into action. They're not going to have to be brought up to speed. And so many of their clients are people that are building communities. They're healthcare organizations, they're senior living organizations, they're growing organizations that are going to be building and constructing in the future. And so this Clients for Life mission lives on into the future and is backed up by relationships over structures.
Structure. That's a great, great description. Thank you for that. So, Roger, tell me a little bit more, this idea of Clients for Life, how does that connect to their employees? When I think of what I know about Warfel and when I look at their executive team, I mean, people have been promoted from within. People stay for a long time. You look at Matt, you look at Brett, you look at Conlon. These are long-term leaders. And then when I think of the things that they're doing right now, next level leaders, Elevate, these initiatives that they have. This past summer, they brought on, I think, 16 summer interns.
Yeah.
I mean, that's impressive.
It
so
is.
somewhere there's a connection between Clients for Life and their employees. What could you tell me about that?
Well, actually, you already know the answer.
Kind of.
It would be difficult to really deliver on clients for life if you weren't concentrating on employees for life. And if you weren't already hiring people that brought the character into the organization that makes Warfel what it is. And then there's this invigorating environment around there that reflects those values that employees either get swept into and become a part of, or they decide, hey, I can't do that, because there is a pace there. Obviously, being a high end, I should say high end isn't the right terminology, but a commercial contractor building sophisticated buildings for sophisticated clients is going at a fast pace all the time, and so that's required of people inside the organization. And so people who can learn to go at that pace and still honor their external priorities of, faith, family, and community, or whatever those might be, they're the people that stick. And so I think it would be very difficult, really, to live out a clients for life philosophy the way Warfel is if we weren't also really building into our employees and bringing them as much development as we possibly can. Certainly on the technical end, they're building very sophisticated buildings, green buildings of sustainable into the future, buildings for sophisticated healthcare and senior living organizations, private education that have very specific futuristic sort of needs. And they're right there with those technical needs, but they're also building into the employees from a leadership and personal growth standpoint. So I think clients for life and employees for life, although employees for life isn't exactly a slogan, you can't have one without the other. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
the way I would see it. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
They have a number of core values that I think drive behaviors within the organization. You touched on one, its initiative. Talk to me about the rest of their core values, and again, how they play into, this is how we behave here at Warfel. If you fit this,
well, back to the chief reminding officer idea that we mentioned a few minutes ago. The leaders at Warfel are very good at that. And there's 5 core values. They've existed for quite a while, but they've gotten built out. They've gotten more defined. They've gotten embedded in their human systems and performance evaluation and job evaluations with clients as they work through that. So we've got honesty, integrity, initiative, teamwork, and accountability. Okay. The conversation we have a lot is, how do initiative and teamwork go together? And when we really have a strong set of core values that drive behavior, beliefs we hold that drive our actions, which is the way that you and I would define that phrase, is you want to have some of them that are actually in tension with each other, and we learn to live inside that tension. So it's been fun to have a number of conversations over the years with leaders there about how does this value of initiative, charging ahead, moving ahead with ideas, permission over forgiveness, or how's that phrase go?
Right.
I'd rather ask forgiveness than permission. That's that sort of idea. How does that work with teamwork? And so, we have a number of high initiative people, but we have people that care about being part of a team. And you can't do general construction and construction management well without a teamwork ethic. It's just impossible. And that team, I'm actually talking more here than what you asked me, but I want to extend that teamwork out to subcontractors, to engineers and architects, and certainly to the team of the client. They may have a clerk of the works, or an owner's rep, or a CEO, or a VP of building and grounds, or VP of facilities that is very much engaged in the whole construction project. So that team, that whole collaborative idea extends well beyond the Warfel team itself. But if the Warfel team isn't already committed to that, almost impossible for them to then invite other partners, which is a very common word at Warfel, other partners into that process, and really make it a broad teamwork activity.
Along those lines, when we talk about Warfel, I've heard this phrase more than once, and the phrase is "run toward adversity."
Yeah.
So tell me about that. Sounds to me like you're running into a burning building or something, but how does that connect to Warfel, and what's that all about?
Yeah, well, I've been privileged to be to consult to a number of contractors over the years, despite the fact that I couldn't even build a birdhouse myself. I have a lot of exposure to construction. And it's really impossible, I think, or nearly impossible, to go through a sophisticated building process without having some degree of problem, some degree of, it's not quite the way I wanted it, some constructability issues, whatever those things might be. The run toward adversity phrase at Warfel is alive and well. If you're not willing to do that, you're probably not going to be long-term successful there. And what it means is we want to be the first to identify a problem. We want to be the first to convene a solution-oriented meeting to that problem, and we want to be the first to take responsibility for it, because it may have been created by something on a drawing. It may have been difficulty in converting the architect's plans to a constructible situation. It may have been something missed by a subcontractor. Warfel is going to be the first to take responsibility, to convene a project team, and to come up with a solution. They're going to take responsibility. So find out what the issues are, run toward them, don't run away from them, don't duck. And people that can do that well and are willing to take on that responsibility, even though they may be only 1% responsible, we run toward adversity, we get that taken care of, we put it behind us, and we move forward with the process.
When you think about that from a client perspective, what more could you want?
Oh, sure. And, there's certainly going to be times when the client is going to be the first to see an issue. But that phone call gets returned right away, that email gets responded to, and we run toward that issue, and we get it. We all know that small problems become big problems, and you have many less big problems if you can run toward the problem when it's still just a seed before it sprouts out of the ground. And I think that's a hallmark of the way this company operates. It's a big difference. Big difference.
Yeah, you can see how that would make.
And make no mistake, solving problems and taking responsibility for them costs money.
Sure. Yeah, I bet. Time, energy.
So if they were only focused on preserving margin, you may not always run toward adversity, but long term, it's, as Matt likes to say over and over again, just simply doing the right thing. And when we think about the right thing, it's the right thing for the client. And that's how you acquire clients for life.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for that. So tell me, how does Warfel make our communities better?
Well, we could look at the beauty of the, think about senior living here in central Pennsylvania, the second largest area of the country for senior living. Warfel's involved in so many of those communities. They're so beautiful. They create such great living environments for our seniors. So I think we could stop there, but I think we really need to go beyond there with the broad and long-term commitment of their entire team, and particularly their executives to community service, deeply embedded in our community. It's just all part of the whole Clients for Life philosophy is the being out and serving. Just an ethic of serving, of being outwardly focused. And this is historic at Warfel. There's a number of things that have changed over time, and the culture has been built, and the team has been recruited, and the company has grown fourfold in the past 10 years. But this whole community thing is historic. It goes back to the Warfel family, who, of course, is no longer involved in the company, but goes way back. And so many of the beautiful historic structures that have been preserved or even built new, Clipper Magazine Stadium, the Fulton Theater, there's other examples of that, are products of Warfel craftsmanship. Yeah,
absolutely. When we think about Warfel, when our clients, the listeners to this podcast, think about Warfel, what can they learn?
Yeah, they can learn a number of things. But I think out of all the things we've talked about here today, I'd just like to go back quickly to that run toward adversity, because in your life, we know that small problems become big problems. And we know when there's just a little bit of an uneasy feeling in a relationship, that if we leave it go, it's unlikely to resolve itself. And so, we could start there, but we could take that into problems that exist in in a manufacturing operation or a construction project or whatever, when we take responsibility for it early, work on me first, the Stephen Covey principle, may only be 1% responsible. Let's take responsibility for building out from that 1%, run toward that adversity, solve that problem early on. It's a Warfel hallmark. It's one of a number of things that makes them special and that we can all certainly learn from.
Thank you so much. Great to talk about Warfel today. Here at North Group, we are honored to serve Warfel Construction. They make our communities better.